So we're going to see how today's Gemara is going to continue in that regarding that. So the Gemara says, Amale, we are now on 3 lines into the wide line on Mem Tes Amud Aleph. Joseph, did you see if they read your message?
It says it was sent, but I can't see who read it.
Okay, very good. We'll see. Hopefully they'll come on very soon. Okay. The Gemara says, Amalei Rav Zera Rav Chizda, Nesi ma v'nisni. So he says, so 2 great rabbis. One rabbi says to the other, Rav Zera says to Rav Chizda, we want to learn Torah from you. We have a lot to learn from you. So please come, Rabbi, and teach us Torah. So the Gemara says, Amalei. So Rav Chizda says to Rav Zera in his great humility, Birchat Mezona lo gamina. I don't know the bracha of mezonot. I didn't learn properly the way to recite Birkat HaMazon, the laws of Birkat HaMazon, and therefore you want me to teach? If I don't even know how to say Birkat HaMazon properly, now what does the rabbi mean? He doesn't know how to say Birkat HaMazon properly? Amalei Maihai, what do you mean? What do you mean you don't know how to say Birkat HaMazon? You're such a great rabbi. Amalei, so Rav Chizda says to Rav Zera, the Kloi Lebei Reish Galuta. Morning, Yaron. Because I came to Reish Galuta. As you know, Reish Galuta is from Reish Galut. I came to the head of the Galut, the head of the exile, the rabbi who was the leading rabbi outside the land of Israel. Uverechi Birkat Mazona. And I went ahead and I said Birkat HaMazon. I led, most probably there was a zimun. I led the zimun. And v'zakfi Rav Ashi lekoei alai kechivya. Rav Sheshes raised his neck. He picked up his head towards me like a snake. We're on Mem Tes Amud Aleph, on 49a. Like a snake who was getting angry. The language over here, what they say regarding the snake, just like the snake raises his head first. Yaron, if you also want to send out to the group, Joseph sent to the group. We'll have a second sending to the group. So maybe your second sending, you'll send Yaron. Just like a snake, he first raises his head comes up, and then comes the rest of his body. And that's what he was like. He was like a snake raising his head, would sound like he was upset. Thank you very much. And he was angry. He was angry with me. Good morning, Morris. How are you? He was angry. And we're going to see why he was angry. By the way, you should know the way a snake raises his head is the way we're supposed to go ahead when we bow down. We learned about it. Good morning, Solomon. It's a Gemara right there. When you bow down, right? Baruch atah. When you say Hashem, how do you get up? You get up, Baruch atah, and then you first pick your head up, and then you rest of the body, like a snake. And the idea is, what I recall, some idea is like this. When you Baruch atah, you go down fast because you're going to bow down in front of Hashem. You bow down, and if you're showing you want to bow down to Hashem, not that I'm hesitant to bow down. I bow down, but when you're going away from bowing down to Hashem, you don't want to go away from bowing down to Hashem like, I don't want to be so bowed down to you. You don't want to go like this, like that, as if I'm moving away from being bowed down to God. Therefore, how do you get up? You get up slowly, but the way you get up is like a snake. You first pick up your head, hear that, Yaron? and then you pick up the rest of the body, right, Solomon? That's how we're supposed to, after you bow down, that's how you're supposed to. I don't know if I said hello to Yosef at Tzaddik. Yosef at Tzaddik, good morning. And we said hello to Morris. Yeah, so that's.
Good morning, Rabbi.
Morning. So that's the way regarding when you bow down. And here our Gemara says that he got angry at me. He looked like he was upset at the way I said the Birkat Hamazon. And what was the issue? Why was the other rabbi upset with me? He looked like he was ready to attack me. I mean, no rabbi should attack another rabbi. But the point, he looked like he was upset. Why was he upset? Because the Lo'am Ramai, so Zera asked, said to Rav Chizda, why was he angry with you? The Lo'amri lo Brit v'lo Torah v'lo Malchut. When I said the Birkat Hamazon, I did not mention in the Birkat Hamazon, we said in the Gemara last week, that Birkat Hamazon, the second bracha, needs to contain Val Torotcha Shalim Adatano. You have to talk about Torah in the second bracha of Birkat Hamazon. You have to talk about Brit, Al Britcha Shechasamta B'B'Sareno, correct? They have to be in the second bracha. And what's the reason for it? Because the Gemara says it's through the mitzvah of Brit Milah that was given to Abraham. That's how Hashem said, I'm going to give you the land of Israel. So the second bracha of Birkat Hamazon deals with what? Land of Israel. It's a thank you. No delacha al Hashem al eretz chem the Torah chava. Baruch Hashem al eretz al mazon. It's about the land of Israel. So you need to connect dots. You have to talk about the things that give us the land of Israel. It's the Brit Milah that gives us the land. And it's the merit of Brit Milah that we'll have the land of Israel. It's because of Torah that we keep the mitzvot. That's why Hashem gave us the land of Israel. Without Torah, we're not going to get the land. We'll be thrown out of the land if we don't keep Torah. So therefore, in the merit of Torah, we get the land. So therefore, we have to talk about Torah in the bracha that deals with the land of Israel. Sound hear what the Gemara says. And Yaron, when you say Birkat Hamazon, you have to focus in on the bracha of Nodelacha, and it contains Britcha, Shechasamta, specifically in that bracha, is we talk about Torah. Specifically in that bracha, we talk about Brit. When we talk about Brit Milah, we just Brit Milah have to do with that bracha. The answer is because it's a merit of Brit Milah that we got the land of Israel. Is that clear? And I did not mention in the Birkat Hamazon that I said, I did not mention Britcha, I did not mention Torah, and I did not mention Malchut. We said also that you have to say in the bracha, in the third bracha of Birkat Hamazon, which is the bracha of Bonei Yerushalayim. Is that the third bracha, Yaron? I need to mention Malchut Beit David. I need to talk about, we say, Malchut Beit David Mishechecha. We talk about Malchut. Why? Because Yerushalayim got its full holiness as a result of David HaMelech's kingship, becoming king, and so on and so forth. So when we talk about Yerushalayim, we can't just talk about Yerushalayim without connecting the battery that gave the Kedusha, that holiness to Jerusalem, was David HaMelech. A Malchus based David Mishechecha, David HaMelech becoming king, then subsequently the Beis HaMikdash was built, and so on and so forth. So we need to talk about David HaMelech's kingdom that brought the holiness to Jerusalem. So that's, and I did not mention those three items. So therefore the rabbi was very angry with me that I didn't mention those three items. Now, so the Gemara said, so Rav Zera asked Rav Chizda. He says, V'amai lo amrit. Why didn't you say all those three things? Why didn't you say it? Right? You didn't say it. Everything you do, everything a rabbi does, we hope, a true rabbi, everything they do is with a thought, with a cheshbon. It's not random. You don't just do something, you say something, you don't say something. Really, every person in life is supposed to be, everything you do is supposed to be thought out. But not everyone works on themselves to be thought out, everything that they do, correct? But here, obviously, this big rabbi, the big rabbi knows what he's, is thought out. So the Gemara wants to know, why didn't you say those items? So the Gemara says, He says, because I held Rav Chanana Lamarav. I'm whole like the opinion of Chanana Lamarav. What are the Amr of Chanana Lamarav? Lo Amar Brit Torah or Malchut Yotza. If you did not say Brit and Torah and Malchut, you fulfill your obligation. You see, Yaron, there'd be about 6 lines in the wide lines. The first word of the line is Brit. Got it? If Chanana, it said that if you did not say Brit and did not mention Torah, you don't mention Malchut, you Yotza. You still get credit for the mitzvah. It's not something that you need to do. And obviously the question is does it mean you after the fact you get credit, but l'chatchila you're supposed to say those things? So obviously this rabbi even l'chatchila didn't do it. I presume if he didn't do it, he held that even l'chatchila you don't need to say it. Now the Gemara clarifies why he held, what's the reason why this opinion holds that it's not vital. See, in halakha, if you don't mention Brit in the Birkat HaMazon, you have to repeat the Birkat HaMazon. If you don't repeat it, if you don't mention it in that bracha, I wonder if you have to repeat the whole Birkat HaMazon or just that bracha. We have to see what the hell. But you don't get credit. If you didn't mention it in that bracha, you do not get credit. If you didn't mention Brit, you didn't get mention Torah. That's what the Shulchan Aruch says. And the question is, why didn't he mention it? And why is it that you can fill the obligation according to this other opinion, even without mentioning it? So the Gemara says, Brit l'f'eino b'noshin. The mitzvah of Brit, a woman is not, there's no mitzvah, the woman is not obligated to give a Brit to her child. And she also herself doesn't have a mitzvah of Brit on herself. So again, very good question, Yaron. Minat Torah, the way the Sefer Chinuch, I think, explains, Minat Torah, the Torah says, Kakosav achalta v'savota lefetz parsha, you should eat, you should be satiated, uveirachtas Hashem alakecha. And you need to thank Hashem, give a bracha to Hashem, al haaretz hatova Hashem nasan loch. The Gemara says there are 3 things that you have to talk about to fulfill your mitzvah of Birkat HaMazon. You have to talk about thank Hashem for the food. You have to thank Hashem for the land of Israel, Al Haaretz HaTova. And the third thing is you have to thank Hashem for Yerushalayim. Tova is Yerushalayim. But the Torah did not give you, Yaron, a text of how you thank Hashem for Israel. You can do it any way you want. And everybody would say Birkat HaMazon in any fashion, however they organize the Birkat HaMazon. Moshe Rabbeinu instituted a text for the first bracha of Birkat HaMazon. For the bracha of Hazon, when the mun came down from heaven, Moshe Rabbeinu was inspired to say a specific text for the first, he created the text for the first bracha. What did he say? When the mun came from heaven. Then when they entered the land of Israel, Yoshua ben Nun, he created the second bracha. He created a specific text, Nodelacha, that we say. That was the words that Yoshua ben Nun instituted. And then David HaMelech, he did a Yerushalayim. What did you say? Very, very good. Very good. So beautiful. So it would seem, what Yaron is saying, it would seem that the requirement to recite, to include in the bracha, in the second bracha, Brit or Torah, would be a rabbinic rabbanan, meaning the Torah did not, based on what we're saying, the Torah didn't say that to fulfill your mitzvah, Birkat HaMazon, you need to contain in the second bracha, talk about Brit Milah. The Torah didn't say that you need to go ahead and talk about Torah in the second bracha in order for you to fulfill the mitzvah of Birkat HaMazon. It would seem that the opinion that says that you need to say it, and the halacha says that, and if you didn't say it, you would have to repeat it, is the rabbinic law. The Rabbanan say that we need to put this into the text of the and therefore it may the question was whether that was the institution of Yeshua when Yeshua instituted the bracha. According to that, maybe that was part of Yeshua's institute when he instituted the bracha. He wanted this to be part of the ingredients of the bracha that it should contain. Now the other rabbi said, like the way Yaron is saying, that the other rabbi held that maybe we never needed to institute Brit and Torah, meaning the Rabbanan never obligated Brit and Torah. Why? Why didn't they obligate it? And it could be he's of the opinion that other people might have put it in, but he holds you don't need to. You don't need to. It's at night. You want to put it in, you can put it in. But the other rabbi says you don't need to. Why not? Because Birkat HaMazon was instituted. There's definitely an obligation. The Mishnah says in Berachos earlier, I think about Chaf and Aleph, that women are obligated in Birkat HaMazon. Nashim chayavot b'Birkat HaMazon. Now, when women are obligated in Birkat HaMazon, the Gemara asks the question: is that obligation min HaTorah, or is that obligation to Rabbanan? But there's no question that women are obligated in what? Their own, right? If your wife has bread, she has to say Birkat HaMazon. It's not because she says she's a lady and there's certain things she's exempt from. No, she has to say Birkat HaMazon. Whether min HaTorah or Rabbanan is a question in halacha. But since Birkat HaMazon is an obligation for women, so he's of the opinion, and this mitzvah and Brit Milah is not something that applies to women. They don't have a Brit themselves, and they're not obligated to give their child a Brit. It's a father's obligation. Therefore, they did not put this into the text. You don't need to have to say Brit in the second bracha of Birkat HaMazon, because Brit has to do with something that has to do with men. And this bracha is both for men and for women. The bracha Birkat HaMazon, therefore, this is not institute. You do not need to say Brit in the Birkat HaMazon. That's this opinion. It's not the halacha. That's the opinion of the rabbi who didn't mention Brit in the Birkat HaMazon, because he held it's not necessary. It's not necessary because because it doesn't apply to women. This mitzvah, it's not a crucial ingredient in the Birkat HaMazon. Similarly, in Torah, and what about Torah? The Torah also, the mitzvah of learning Torah, women have a different mitzvah than men. Men have a mitzvah to learn Torah. Ladies, the mitzvah of learning Torah, the men have to learn Torah, even though they know the laws, they know everything, they still have a mitzvah to learn, to keep on learning and learning and learning, right? Solomon, we have a mitzvah to always learn, correct? Women's obligation is to perform certain mitzvahs that they have. In order for them to perform mitzvahs that they have, they need to learn. Meaning women are obligated to go ahead and keep the Shabbat. So they need to learn the laws of Shabbat in order to keep the Shabbat. Women are obligated to keep the laws of Nidah, right? Family purity, Taharat HaMishpacha. They need to learn the laws in order to keep them. But the learning of but they weren't given them the mitzvah per se of learning itself. Meaning, see, if a man, even if you know the Gemara, you have a mitzvah every time. You have a mitzvah to keep on learning, reviewing the Gemara. There's a mitzvah to learn Torah, even if something is not a practical law, something has to do with the Kohanim. You have a mitzvah, even if you yourself, to learn about what the Kohanim need to do. The women's mitzvah is to perform mitzvah. Her learning is something. It's not for this. She doesn't have the mitzvah to learn for the sake of learning for itself, like men have. Their mitzvah of learning is about getting them ready to know how to perform mitzvah.
What's the source of learning for our questions?
There's different psukim. V'limadatem osam es benechem l'dababam.
Right, and why is that a 5 minute? Like where do this fall
I see, we have to see if where the source is that women are not included, right?
Yeah, why?
Maybe I don't know if it's because it says b'nechem v'lo b'notechem. Maybe it's from that part that source that emphasizes the boys. That might be from that, or I have to see. I have to review where the source is. But women are not chayavot in the mitzvah of Talmud Torah the way men are chayav in the mitzvah of Talmud Torah. Again, the women's obligation. Therefore, but women say Birkat Torah because they need to learn in order to go ahead and perform their mitzvah. That's the distinction. So that's the distinction between the women and the men. So therefore, Toratcha Shalima Detanu, that mitzvah of Torah, of learning Torah, applies, the mitzvah of learning Torah for itself applies for men and not for women. So being that that's the case, so therefore it's not a vital, important ingredient to mention the Birkat HaMazon, because since that doesn't apply to the women. So that also, and so Torah Malchut, and also Malchut, the Malchut Beit David, to mention Malchut in the third bracha, Malchut is also, women are not don't have the status of a king. You appoint a male king to rule the Jewish community. You don't appoint a woman's king to rule the Jewish community. And therefore, similarly, the Gemara says, let's say Avadim, if someone has an Evet Kanani, and an Evet Kanani, let's say, is obligated to also do Birkat HaMazon. An Evet Kanani is obligated in mitzvahs like a woman. And being that they're obligated in mitzvahs like a woman, and they're not, and even though an Evet has Brit, but an Evet does not have the mitzvah of learning Torah like men, and an Evet is not able to be king. So therefore, Torah or Malchut lefi she'eina b'nashim v'lo b'avadim, since these laws don't apply to women and slaves, so therefore the Chachamim did not make this an obligation to say it in the Birkat HaMazon, since the Birkat HaMazon is instituted for the women as well, and therefore these will not be a vital ingredient to be stated in the Birkat HaMazon. And the rabbis did not want to create two different Birkat HaMazon, one for the men and one for the women to say. They wanted it to be one. What do you say, Yaron? One Birkat HaMazon for everybody, and therefore these ingredients are not vitally necessary. And therefore once these ideas of Torah Shlimat Tanu and Brit and Malchut does not apply to women, therefore, or Avadim, some of them, therefore they don't have to be said in the Birkat HaMazon, according to that opinion. So Rav Zera said to Rav Chisda, you know what? It's true. You have the opinion of Rav Hananel Amarav. You have that opinion that says that you can fulfill your obligation of Birkat HaMazon without mentioning Brit, without mentioning Torah, without mentioning Malchut. But you know what? We have all the other rabbis that disagree. So why did you pick this rabbi over all the other rabbis? Which seems to be, I would say, he's coming to say the other rabbis are the majority. That's a minority opinion. It's a das yachid. It's a minority opinion that says that you do not need to mention Brit in the Birkat HaMazon. That you do not need to mention Torah. But the majority opinion says you must mention it. It is important. Even though women are not obligated to say, to do the mitzvah Brit Milah, but the end of the day is Brit Milah, that was the mitzvah that gave us, in that merit, we got Eretz Yisrael. And even though the women did not have that level of learning, mitzvah of learning Torah the way men have, but it was the merit of learning of Torah that got us Eretz Yisrael. And therefore, even though the lady cannot be the king and the Evet can't be the king, but it's the kingship of David that made Jerusalem so holy. So therefore, these need to be said, even though it doesn't apply particularly. even though the woman is not obligated, is not obligated in the mitzvah to give brit milah to her son or to herself, but it's a vital thing to mention and recognize, even though she herself, this mitzvah doesn't apply to me, but applies to the Jewish community. And therefore, it's important for me to say this, as part of the,
We have to mention in the answer. We have known that the woman and the maid, they don't do the same answer.
no, they could say the same Birkat Hamazon. I mean, even today, we say you have to say this in Birkat Hamazon, and we don't, and we still have the same Birkat Hamazon for men and women, and the woman must say Britcha. She must say why. So now the question is, how does a lady say Britcha shechasamta b'bsarenu? The Brit that you made in our flesh. She doesn't have a Brit. She doesn't have a circumcision. The answer is she's referring to the Jewish people as a whole, in general, and which really lends a little bit to the opinion of the Ashkenazim. Which opinion of the Ashkenazim? Whether a lady says a bracha on a mitzvah that she's patur from. Meaning, let's say that your wife, you go, she gives her a lulav and etro. So the Sfaradim hold she should not say a bracha. Ashkenazim say yes, but the Sfaradim say no. Why? Why do the Sfaradim say no? How could she say the bracha on the lulav? It says Asher Kiddushanu v'Betzotav v'Tzivanu ala tila lulav. That you commanded us on taking a lulav. She's not commanded to take a lulav. But yet, if you're Ashkenaz, the Ashkenaz woman will say the bracha. Why? Because she's not referring to herself. God commanded us. The us meaning the Jewish community. And therefore, she has a right, she can say that bracha. I'm just saying, it seems that the Birkat Hamazon, it seems to lend a symbol that even though they're not obligated in that mitzvah, they can still refer to it as Britcha shechasamta b'bsarenu. So that's what he tells them. You left to the side all these Tanaim and all these Amoraim that says that if you do not mention Brit and Torah and Malchut, you do not get credit in the Birkat Hamazon. Va'avdit kirav, and you did like the opinion of Rav that holds you do get credit. Now listen, Rav is a great rabbi, but still, the other rabbi says it's not appropriate for you to go ahead and to take the opinion of Rav, which seems to be a minority opinion, over all the other opinions. Now the Gemara says, Omar Rabba Bar Yochanan Rabbi Yochanan. Now that the Gemara moved away, that we just clarified that you have what you need to do in the third bracha of the Birkat Hamazon, which is, the second bracha of Aretz, where you have to mention Britcha shechasamta b'bsarenu, and you have to mention Torah in that bracha. Now the Gemara wants to try to understand the fourth bracha, which we spoke about earlier last week, the bracha of Hatov HaMeitiv. That's the fourth bracha of the Birkat Hamazon. And the question is, how is that bracha stated? Do you say Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Olam? Or do you not start with a Baruch in the beginning? If you notice in the Birkat Hamazon, bracha number 1 starts with a Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Olam. Bracha number 2 does not start with Malchut. No Delacha has no Malchut. Bracha number 3, they're connected. So what about the bracha number 4? Bracha number 4 seems to be connected. So why does bracha number 4, right? So, right, we spoke, why does bracha number 4 need to begin with the Baruch? It's connected, right? So the Gemara is going to say, so what did we say earlier? We said earlier it would, say that again? Only the first and the fourth. The fourth is Baruch Atah Hashem Elokeinu Melech Haolam Kel HaTov HaMeitiv L'Kol Shem Chol Yom. If the Bonei, what'd you say? Oh, very good. So that because we said that that's not Min HaTorah, it was instituted later, and therefore it starts with a Baruch, right? So that's why it starts with a Baruch, because it's not Minat Torah, correct? The first one's Minat Torah, and the other two are also Minat Torah. The first three are Minat Torah. Therefore, the second and the third are riding on the first. They're called Brachas B'chol Chaverta. And the fourth, since it was instituted later, but we said there's a machloket in the Gemara if the fourth is rabbinic or Minat Torah. So that's what we'll see tomorrow. We'll go into that discussion tomorrow, more regarding the fourth bracha. As you know, we go with the opinion that it's rabbinic, and therefore we start with the Baruch in the beginning of that bracha. I want to wish everyone a great day. Thank you everybody for joining. Joseph and Yosef Tzaddik and Morris, have a great day.
Rabbi, you too, have a good day.
Thank you very much, Salam, and thank you for being here. Thank you.